This is April 6th, 2021. As the World Burns, I'm your host, Randall Burns. I want to discuss the origins of this channel a little bit. This is not my traditional episode, but I thought that this might be useful background for some of you. The story started in part prior to 2006. I worked as a computer professional. I'd had some problems after the dot-com bubble burst, a little bit finding work, but in 2006, I was working for a large school district in this area. And I had a medical accident that forced me to leave my database administration job there. I also had to leave a distance master's at Carnegie Mellon University I was enrolled in the software engineering department. This episode involved severe complications from a fairly minor surgery and a severe medication reaction that required additional medical treatment. Part of the medication reaction involved frequent gout attacks. Like every other week, I was having a acute gout attack, and it took a while before I could get on medication for that. And even after I got on medication, I still have arthritic symptoms that persist into the present. Those have gradually subsided a bit, and I'll talk a bit more about how that happened. But I had children at home, which included a nonverbal autistic son. Just taking care of them was overwhelming, so I focused what energy I had on the children first. Even now, even if I was fully recovered now, it would not make sense for me to go back to work as a DBA. My skill set is a little out of date, and I still can't handle the stress and workload that job would involve. My younger children are now out on their own. My disabled son still requires substantial care. He lives with me still now, and taking care of a nonverbal adult young man that's nonverbal does take real work. And I'll do some more videos on another channel about that topic of special needs parenting. But one thing I found is that on one sense I have time. On the other hand, I don't have the kind of large blocks of time I need to do things like software development projects. Not the way I'm used to doing them, at least. And I still was dealing with very real medical constraints. I mean, there were times, for example, when simply driving was a real challenge for me. But one thing I found I could do was some writing projects, and I got some semi-professional writing assignments on a site that has some big name writers. That's vdare.com, which you'll see mixed things about, and my writing there is not typical of the other featured writers there, but I do have a block of writing there. And after the Trump election, I wasn't feeling real comfortable with some of the direction that I saw things going in that direction. And I haven't written a lot since then. I may write some stuff again when I have things to say on immigration. And there are actually some articles I would like to write for that audience, but I have not been writing there recently. I did take a stab at writing on a broader range of topics on Quora, and I was there, spent about a year and a half where I was pretty active there. And I have over 1,000 followers there, which means that when I write an article, it's going to get some instant attention. But I found it wasn't, writing and writing well is something that's a labor-intensive task for me. I had some classmates at U of Chicago that were genuinely gifted writers, and I graduated thinking of myself as a horrible writer. A woman named Sarah Schulman, who's a very gifted playwright and has done a bunch of off-Broadway productions, was one of my classmates. And comparing myself to her, it's like, no, I'm a horrible writer. But when I got to Silicon Valley, I found that I wasn't so bad compared to people who studied engineering and had never had to write hardly anything through college. So I did a fair amount of tech writing when I was in Silicon Valley from time to time. Another major factor is that to control the symptoms of my medical accident, I was more or less forced to lose an obesity diagnosis. Gout is made worse by obesity. And one of the things I found was that one of the ways I could contain my gout attacks was by very intense exercise and frequent exercise. And it turns out that I'd already lost about 40 pounds before I went into this episode of my life. But I had a huge incentive to exercise a lot more than most people do. And as it turns out, when you review the medical literature, this is very helpful in containing weight loss. It isn't so important to creating weight loss, but it's very important in sustaining weight loss. The National Weight Control Registry at Brown University, 90% of their sample exercise an average of an hour a day. And I dare say that is not representative of people who at some point or another lose 30 or more pounds. And it's kind of surprising. This is actually one of my favorite weight loss site, and there's very few people outside of obesity specialists that have ever heard of it. I'll include the link in the description. So anyhow, I started out when I lived in Silicon Valley. I got up to 278 pounds and 42% body fat. As I said before, I went into my medical accident, I was down to around 240 pounds. And that was done without conscious caloric restriction. It was done largely by containing what foods I ate, more so, and some meal timing and fasting was involved in that. But this morning, I'm down to 177 pounds at 21.2% body fat. 21% body fat is healthy, according to Jackson and Pollock, who are researchers that have studied the issue of body fat estimates. I don't pay attention to the BMI. I think it's a statistically irrelevant measurement, and that is agreed to by the Department of Defense, which has abandoned BMI in favor of body fat percentage for making enlistment decisions. The Army line, by the way, for men my age is 30%. If you're a senior officer, you cannot be above 30% or they will let you go. And you do have a right to, they use a simple tape measurement for their first pass. And if you don't qualify by that, you can appeal to have a dunk tank or DEXA scan as an estimate of your body fat percentage. But they do not regard BMI as, one of their researchers called it completely useless for our purposes. And I tend to agree from my own experience of talking to physicians about that, which I also came to the conclusion that physicians should have a statistics course, and that material should be included on the MCAT to help them guide patient decisions better. But the point is that the level of transformation I made is relatively rare. I mean, I've read that fewer than 5% of people that ever have an obesity diagnosis lose it, and I was well beyond the borderline case of obesity at 42%. Anything above 25% is typically considered obese. 30% by some researchers, including the military. But I've been interested in the issue of prediction markets and forecasting since college. I came to the issue in part looking at the literature on economic planning and asking, why is it that the Soviets had so much problems with economic planning? And it turns out that one of the researchers that was offering a serious alternative to Soviet-style economic planning was a man named Stafford Beer, who was hired by the Allende regime and scared the bejesus out of the US CIA because they were afraid that what he was doing in Chile might actually work. Okay, which is one of the reasons why the plug got pulled on Allende the way it did. And I think Allende might have had a very different story if he'd brought Beer in before assuming the presidency rather than after he knew he was having a problem with the economic planning methods that he was using. But anyhow, a friend of mine about a year and a half ago introduced me to Metaculus, and the strike struck me as much more accessible than prediction markets. You don't have to learn trading strategies to participate. You just have to learn how to think a little bit about probability. And I already had a background in probability and statistics from college, and I worked on adaptive predictive systems before, so it was a very accessible site for me. And they have an active community, and it was nice being part of an active prediction-oriented community. Is the site perfect? No. Is there room for improvement? Yes, there's a lot of room for improvement, but it's a site that's been accessible and has a growing community behind it, and I've enjoyed being part of it. And this became much more important to me when the pandemic hit, because I was looking for some guidance on just what to do as this hit. and reliable information. And I didn't trust a lot of what I was seeing as being accurate. And so I authored a bunch of questions on Metaculus related to this. And I found them to be useful in helping me with my planning process and my preparation process. And I still want to do, and I still have an impulse to do something more for this extended community and to help broaden its reach, which is part of the reason for this channel. I'm not the best predictor there. I do have a little bit of history in public speaking, and I was on the debate team at the University of Chicago when I was an undergraduate. That's a very good debate team. I was not by any means one of their star debaters. The previous year they'd won a world championship, but I was at least able to participate on a meaningful level there. And anyhow, into the pandemic, I'm intensifying the exercise regime because I'm here stuck at home and I have exercise equipment in my home. And one of the things I found that I enjoyed watching was YouTube videos. And one of those YouTube videos was solving the money problem. And after watching this, I said to myself, maybe I could do this. And other people told me before that I might be a good candidate for a talk show. And in general, I'm kind of turned off by the ethos of a lot of contemporary American talk shows on radio. And somehow it seemed to me like a bit of a cop-out to hide my obese body on radio, like Rush Limbaugh did. And now I'm feeling at least ready to do something a little bit more photographically oriented. I'm not really fit yet, but I'm at least not actively unhealthy, and I'm kind of at the level that I was used to being during my high school and college years. So I'm feeling comfortable about that. I'm feeling like I've rejoined the human race in a way. And being as obese as I am, it is something that made me feel completely invisible and in many circles subhuman, quite frankly. And I just didn't want to deal with a lot of, I found solitary activities in that period of my life more fulfilling, and I'm now actively seeking out more social activities, which of course the pandemic is making limited, but this channel is a route that I have, and I'm trying to avail myself of it. And I have other videos that I would like to do. I have a friend with a big block of video archival material from the San Francisco counterculture years that we want to get on, but that'll be its own channel. I am interested in doing some things on my health and fitness experiences, and may do that also in other channels, along with family history things for my extended family and my progeny. And I do feel the need for more money coming down the road. I don't have an urgent need for immediate cash coming in, but I have things that down the road I would like. So I'm making an investment in hopes that maybe this channel or some of the other stuff that I'm doing may be monetized. I'm a little hesitant about the advertising model for this channel, and I'll discuss that later on. I've been reading, in part because of the influence of solving the money problem, I've been reading more on the issue of basic investment and entrepreneurship in the literature. I was an economics major as an undergraduate. I studied vocational agriculture in high school and I got some real business background from that. I still need to close some holes in my my formal business background. Like I've never had an accounting course, and I'll probably need to shore that up in terms of understanding the investment literature better than I do at this point. But I have some clear help with that one. A really good friend of mine used to be an auditor, so I can get help on that one easily. But one of the niches I see here is the issue of bridging the gap between traditional investments and prediction markets and forecasting sites. And I don't think anyone's really done that yet. And I'm pretty convinced that forecasting sites and prediction markets can be useful in guiding traditional investments. But I've never seen anybody bridge that gap just yet. Robin Hanson in some papers talked about it, like he talked, one of his interesting papers is for a market where you would look at the stock price of a company if the CEO stays versus if the CEO leaves. And that was an interesting, attempt in that area, but I think a lot more can be done. And I'd like to make a stab towards doing that and gathering a community interested in that task. And that may, for example, I can see us having a prediction market guided, something like an ETF down the road. And I have some ideas on how to do that. And I'll discuss that in future programs. But that's part of the roots of this. And more than, I'm trying not to be ideological on this. But I have the sense that better predictive tools can enable groups of people to make better decisions in many dimensions. Now, there's an economic and investment decision aspect of this one. I've seen cohesive communities that make some very boneheaded decisions because of crowd hysteria and groupthink. And I think these forecasting sites and prediction markets are a tool for containing groupthink and crowd hysteria a bit. And that may plausibly have broader applications, but I think the first thing to do is to do it on a small scale. And that's part of my focus on this one. That's part of why I focus on investors, because quite frankly, if you can show that you can just get 1% over the S&P 500, people will be flocking and people will be participating, wanting to participate. And I think if we get enough participation, we plausibly could demonstrate something like that without a lot of shuck and jive. So this is Randall Burns, As the World Burns, sharing my thoughts on the origin of this channel. Thank you for bearing with me. Love your comments, love suggestions for more episodes. Please do subscribe to the channel, like the video, and comment if you can. I do want to see your comments. Those mean a lot to me. And this will be largely a listener-driven channel. And I may do a formal membership down the road. Signing off, thank you for sharing your time with me.